Welcome to part two. The scriptures tell us how the bride draws closer to Christ and is followed, in her footsteps are followed by the wise virgins. And this picture is what we're going to see in the heavens this weekend, with Venus being birthed out of Virgo at the Spica branch star or first fruits, representing Jesus, and Vesta, representing the wise virgins, closely following Virgo, and being birthed out of Virgo September 7th. At that time, the moon will meet the planet Mars, associated with war, and the archangel Michael standing up at Virgo's head star Sabijava, meaning the gloriously beautiful. And in this location, last month, the last lunar cycle, the conjunction of the moon and Venus marked the sealing of the bride. And there are many more notes on that asteroid Vesta because it's not a really familiar asteroid to many. You can find them in the endnote section of the article. And then the dwarf planet Sirius, the largest non-planet, it means grain brought forth. It points to Jesus being brought forth as grain. And this completes the beautiful birthing and harvest picture from its position in the Hyades cluster, the congregated believers in the head of Taurus, the bull. It aligns with the belt stars of Orion and the hawk eye Sirius, the eye of Sirius the prince, Jesus the Prince of Peace, coming down to swiftly snatch, just like a hawk snatches its prey. Jesus will snatch us out of harm's way swiftly. Ceres is described as a maiden, but also as a goddess of agriculture, and particularly of wheat, of harvest, and of marriage. There's also a reference in the Strong's Concordance because it is tied to the Greek goddess Demeter. Watchman and author Louis Vega. Ceres was given a 7-day feast that started on April 15, which so happens to be on Passover. So the Ceres dwarf planet is connected to Passover. The article linked over here reveals how Ceres conjuncted with Spica, the first fruits of wheat, during the first blood moon tetrad. That was April 15th, 2014. So Ceres is tied to Passover, tied to Spica in the conjunction during the blood moon tetrad. And we know that Spica is not only a star that marked the Lord's birth, it is also a star which marks the spring. It also now is the anchor point of the birthing of Venus and the birthing of Vesta. And what I understand from this description, and we're going to see the images in a couple of minutes, is that this harvest and birthing alignment speaks of the moon bride, entering the heavenly Jerusalem as a faithful witness, possibly indicating the start of the end times harvest, while the beloved bride-type Venus, like David, Venus, which was crowned during the Christ angle alignment of 2017, which marked the sealing of the bride last month in the forehead of Virgo, is now birthed out of Virgo, closely followed by the wise virgins, marked by asteroid Vesta. And this timing of this alignment corresponds with the vision of the Swedish boy linked over here, and I covered that extensively in a previous article, of a Friday pre-gathering of the Bride of Christ at Giza. Final warnings to be issued to those we interceded for, like we covered last time, like Lot was interceded for by Abraham, and then a subsequent worldwide departure. So let's take a look at the visuals. The dawn of September 4 to 6, we see the moon progressing from the constellation Cancer, the cattlefold, into the eastern gate of the heavenly Jerusalem, that representation, the sickle stars of Leo, to then meet up with Leo in the upper body of the lion. This is what the entry into that sickle star section, that eastern gate section, how that is visualized on September 5th. That same day, we see Venus lining up with the branch star, the first fruits of Spica, closely followed by Vesta, the type of the wise virgins, closely following Venus wherever she goes. And on this 5th of September, we can see the dwarf planet Ceres right within the Hyades cluster in the forehead of Taurus the Bull. And zooming out, you can see the Ceres dwarf planet in the Hyades cluster, lining up with the belt stars of Orion, physically represented in the Giza pyramids, the triple delta or 444 sign, and then lining up with the bright star Sirius, the eye of the hawk constellation, since then presented as the dog or dog star. So if you draw a line from Sirius through the belt of Orion, you go through the Hyades cluster, onward to the Pleiades cluster, which is just out of sight over here. But the grain offering, Jesus, is in the center of the congregated bride, the Hyades cluster in the forehead of Taurus the bull. And we know that Elul is the month that the king is in the field. And remember how he walked through the fields of wheat and the disciples handpicked the kernels of grain, just like the first fruits that Jesus represented. They handpicked the kernels of grain on the Sabbath and were rebuked by the Pharisees. But the Lord was showing a clear picture that in this month, His presence on earth is felt and He oversees the harvest personally. And the bride will be handpicked from the fields. So on September 6th, we can see the darkened moon in between the loins of Leo, and the sun is still within the legs of Leo or Shiloh, so within the bounds of the fulfillment of Genesis 49, 9 to 11. And then the next day we can see that Vesta, the virgins, have also crossed the boundary from the upper into the lower portion of Virgo. And the same scene zoomed in. And this is one of the enemy's rendition of the fruition and maturity of their darkened bride, who is perfumed and adorned not in white but in black and red, in the Venus shell, just like the Greek goddess Venus, that rendition, holding a dying or an already dead man-child on her lap, just like the Pietà of Mother Mary and Jesus, adorned with perfume, in this case a nuclear explosion, sinking aircraft carriers, and representing the opening of Pandora's box, just like the pandemic, the opening of mayhem. And then September 7th, the sun is at the hind legs of Leo, still within the bounds of the Shiloh prophecy, and the moon will cross the Savijava glorious star in the head of Virgo, lining up with the planet Mars, and that represents Mars or the Archangel Michael standing up. And this is a closer rendition of that scene. After the Feast of New Oil, the Feast of Wood Offering starts, a 6-day festival where the tribes are following up one another with offering their wood for the firing up of the altar. And that is especially important in the enemy signaling, because 9/11/2001, those attacks took place on Elul 23 on Torah calendar. And recall the extensive 623 predictive programming and the enemy foreshadowing a second 9/11 series of attacks. And in these notes in the article, you can read more about the understanding of that 623 coding. The spiritual context of the enemy signaling is, of course, the Lord's birth on September 11th, 3 BC at sundown, 5:53 local time. And that is when the spica first fruits, the branch, the righteous branch, touched the horizon. And as the enemy desires to usurp the Lord's identity and authority, let us consider they may attempt to overshadow and emulate his birth and circumcision pattern to usher in their new world order and the leadership onto the world stage. So, of course, if we are seeing this bridal harvest picture, the birthing picture, the enemy will try to usurp that to further their agenda spiritually. But we have a beautiful, promising sign, and I'm going to close this video with this sign because one day later, on the 24th of Elul, the dove is sent out by Noah for the third time, and it does not return. So, I hope this information is a blessing to you and an encouragement, and may also offer some comfort and consolation for those who are going through very difficult valleys of decision, having to walk by faith completely and yielding those people and those things which are really close to their hearts, and having to take a deep dive of faith, a deep leap of faith, and trusting the Lord for everything, for everyone. And we know that we can, and we know that He is worthy. So this was my intent for this video, and I pray a blessing of peace, of comfort, of encouragement over every one of you. We know that the final leg of our spiritual journey is upward. It is difficult. We're tired, we're weary, but we're also being confirmed and blessed by the Lord. And He is informing us not just what He's doing with us and what He's doing and allowing in the world, but we know He will foretell everything He does because He does share with His servants and prophets. Much love.